I doubt that many people realize that there's a playground.
No. Water feature, unless you're specifically looking at that, they may realize that there's like a little piece added or something.
Well, I think people are understand. I'm sorry, yeah. They may not realize it's the train.
Right, yeah, yeah.
They changed it, expanded. Kids, I'm sure.
Oh,
That's not the same thing. A whole lot better.
yeah.
I mean, the whole map of training.
Yeah.
Do flips,
Yeah,
things like that. This one, yeah. On the trampoline is, overdoing it, but there's, can't go.
So far. It could change, right? Yeah, meeting hasn't started yet.
Are you guys going up front for a reason? What's at the back? You're on? I'm what's at the back.
Well, we have to get introduced, so I have to.
Okay, yeah, you're gonna get your.
I sit right next to you so you can smell it.
Worried about the Smell your stress.
That was addressed that Megan tried to get on, and she had it put her in a sentence, and she was sad, and she grabbed the hat. Of course, the
I don't know, I think it's a little bit better.
Stick with it. I feel that. It's exactly. My dad just said to me.
Just watch it. I'm going to have a page too. Or no, sorry. When you get to crystal characters, when you have do you write a permit? Or do you take your make a survey?
Wasn't quite as warm.
I don't know how much, I know that it's with this one, you're not actually knowing how. And then if you find out that the danger is, and did you, they could have impacted muscles.
That's how I just had to happen for this time to know.
Go in last night.
I went to Vegas.
Yeah, I thought Fingercrawl might have won because one of the Havens freshman, and she's the one, her sister plays in Mary Washington. She's gone to Zero. It's a few hundred fans. And she's a tall and strong freshman. But usually her mom goes yeah, I didn't see anything. We jumped back to that. Now his program is a pretty good program for this They historically always had a good program. I don't know if it's better than Riverdale. Had different
What is it, crickets? This is how I know.
Got a handle about it. Right.
I know that about half of those chairs are off. They wouldn't think about it now. They're living in those chairs.
Tried it with her cousin in the station. But you figure you were solid girls had that same concept. Yeah, but she although she wasn't such a time. Oh, what? It's interesting, you know, it's like real baseball players. Then you cross and they're supposed to bunt, cross as you're bunting, you know, yeah, well, when you get older, you don't just square around. And you're supposed to catch the ball. So if you can catch the ball, how big your deck is, you should be able to I didn't expect to get softball practice. Go on turf, right? Turf, grass. don't like people messing with me.
No, it's not fun.
Have a surprise for you. Okay, all right. Sounds good. Yeah. There it is. Good morning. I'd like to call the September 24th, 2019 meeting of the Marine Resources Commission to order. I'd like to welcome you here at this time. If you would please stand for the invocation led by Mr. Ed Taggart, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Mr. Wayne France.
Lord, let us pray. In an age in which mankind has such tremendous influence over our natural world, it is our responsibility to be proactive stewards of the beautiful gifts that you have bestowed upon us. We are thankful for staff's efforts to make this meeting possible. We ask for thoughtful testimony and decisions. Further, we ask for the safety of our Marine, police, and watermen. For this we pray. Amen.
Amen.
So all return, face the flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Again, I'd like to welcome everyone here to the Marine Resources Commission. At this time, I'd like to have our newly appointed Chief of Fisheries Management, Mr. Pat Gear, come forward. He's got some new staff he'd like to introduce.
Good morning, Commissioner and members of the Commission. We
Morning,
have,
sir.
I'm the new chief, and we've had a lot of new staff come in the last 6 months, and I'd like them all to come up here and introduce them. Like I said, it's not a few. We've been doing I have sat in over 10 interview panels since I've come here in the last 18 months, so it's, but a good group of folks. I'll start with Summer Smott, who's came to us from, she's originally from Michigan, and she came here from Miami, Florida, where she was working in the Everglades, and she has a master's from the University of Miami and a bachelor's from Michigan State University. She's a water polo player, which I found impressive. We found that out. Her background is in marine mammals, bioacoustics, and fisheries ecology, and she'll be working on croaker, spot, Jonah crabs, and charter captain issues. And next to her is Olivia Phillips. She just started. She's a soon-to-be VMS graduate. She's going to be defending this month, December. She'll be defending, and her work there is on juvenile striped bass and climate issues, and she'll be working on a number of things for us. She'll be working on Spanish mackerel, spotted sea trout, working with Andrew on some oyster issues, and developing a new commercial cobia reporting system for commercial fishery that we'll have to do for ASMFC. Next, okay, I'm going to skip you and go to Kaylee, okay? Kaylee is one of our new employees. She just started on the 10th. She's a mandatory reporting technician. She comes to us from Phoebus High School, and she just started, and she's working in mandatory reporting. And who's down there? Okay, the last two new employees are down at the end. We had an excellent working relationship with Cynthia Jones, Dr. Jones at Old Dominion, for well over 20 years.
Who was on this commission and served admirably.
And Cynthia Jones was on my committee when I was in grad school, so I was very proud of the fact that she's decided to retire. She's not retired yet, but she's in the process of going that route. And she wanted her lab to come here, to come to VMRC, and she wanted the staff to come here as well. So we worked very hard. We thought it'd be a really easy transition. Well, nothing is easy when you figure that one. But we worked very hard on that. We have we built a lab over here. If you haven't seen it, when you get a chance, we have a wet lab and a dry lab over there with the otoliths in it. But we were very proud and honored to get Hank Lau, who is the manager of that lab for the last 15 years. He has a good background on aging. He's developed a lot of great techniques. His website is used world-renowned, and he sits on our the stock assessment committee for striped bass. And Jessica Gilmore is the technician in the lab, and I was really impressed with her when we went through this process, because she was saying, no, you do it this way. This is the way we do it. And the lab went up with, with her help and our staff working, and we got the lab completely built in just a few months. So if you get a chance, go back there and take a look at it. And so we're going to be doing all the work the Cynthia Jones group has done. They're all incorporated here. We're going to have a few college kids that are going to be working with us as well, part-time, working in the lab. So they're coming on board, and we're very proud of that. We have a few new promotions, too, as well. Jonathan DePass recently got promoted to a planner in mandatory reporting. And we also have, we have Ethan Simpson, who got promoted. He's not here today. He's working on other issues. He's just got promoted to the biological sampling program supervisor. So we've had a lot of changes in fishery. When Rob O'Reilly announced his retirement, I said, we finally got staff up. Finally got staff up. Now we're losing, we're losing the trunk is what we're losing, and now we have to start over. But the deputy chief is vacant, and that closes soon, and we hope to get that filled and finally be up to full force with our staff. And we've got a great, young, energetic staff, and I'm excited to work with them. So.
Great job, Pat. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you, sir. At this time, we have the agenda. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions to the agenda by members of staff or members of the commission? Mr. Watkinson.
Commissioner, the applicant's agent has asked that item 2B be pulled. That's the case for King City County Stormwater Division. Will not be heard this month.
Item 2B. So noted. Any other? Mr. Gear.
Commissioner, staff asks that issue 14 be removed pertaining to Spanish and king mackerel, and the reason for this is that we found out yesterday both Maryland and North Carolina are keeping their state waters open to commercial Spanish mackerel harvest as a bycatch fishery, even though the federal waters closed on August 24th. In addition, I found out that ASMFC is going to be addressing a bycatch allowance, an addendum for an allowance in state waters at their October meeting. So staff feels at this time it's probably prudent to not address this issue.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, from a logistical perspective as well, items number 10 and 13 will be heard after lunch. That's items 10 and 13. That's all the additions, corrections, and deletions. The chair will entertain a motion.
I move we approve the agenda as amended.
Motion made by Mr. Zedrin to approve the agenda as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Minor. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. You've had an opportunity to review the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any additions, corrections, or deletions to the minutes by members of the commission? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion.
I move we approve the minutes as presented.
Motion made by Mr. Zedrin to approve the minutes as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ballard. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. At this time, I'd like to swear in members of staff and members of the Virginia Institute of Marine Science that may testify today. Do you solemnly swear the testimony that you give today will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you very much. Next item are permits, projects over $500,000 with no objections and with staff recommendation for approval. Mr. Watkinson, good morning.
Sir, Commissioner Bowman, Commission members, with the deletion of item 2B, we have one page 2 item this month. These are projects over $500,000 in project costs for which staff has conducted a public interest review, and we are recommending approval. The item we have on the agenda is Chesterfield County Environmental Engineering. Their request authorization to modify their existing permit to increase the encroachment in Falling Creek associated with the construction of a stone 4-bay weir, increasing the size to 3,368 square feet, and to increase the linear footage of the Falling Creek stream channel dredging by an additional 387 linear feet. This modification is part of the Falling Creek Reservoir Restoration Project in Chesterfield County, and all permit conditions shall remain the same. With that, I'll be happy to try and answer any questions you might have.
Any questions by members of staff? By members of the commission for Mr. Watkinson? Thank you, sir. This is a public hearing. Is anyone here that wishes to be heard for or against this project? Seeing none, the matter is before the commission. Mr. Ballard.
Move to approve item 2A.
Motion made by Mr. Ballard to approve item 2A. Is there a second to the motion?
So moved.
Second by Mr. Tankard. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Page 3 items, sir. Consent agenda.
Yes, sir, we have 3 consent agenda items.
We'll take them one at a time, please.
Yes, sir. The first request is after the fact, request for authorization by Robert Taylor to retain 149 linear feet of riprap revetment installed without a VMRC permit adjacent to 908 Cavalier Drive, situated along Linghorn Bay in Virginia Beach. In this case, the applicant has agreed to pay a $1,000 civil charge and a triple permit fee of $300 in lieu of further enforcement action. Earlier this year, Mr. Taylor submitted an application to expand an existing Pirius property. When our staff visited the property, they observed that the riprap revetment existed along the shoreline. And they realized by thinking about a past project at the site that that project had not been finally permitted by VMRC. It actually went back to a 2004 application by Mr. Taylor and his consultant at the time to build the revetment. There was some debate of whether or not a city approval was required for that structure or not. While that was being considered, we inactivated the file because we had not heard from the city. But it turns out the city had approved at the staff level the construction of the project, and we never were notified of that, and so we never acted on the permit to build the revetment. It got built, we discovered it, and we felt the best thing to do to resolve it was to review an after-the-fact application to permit the structure as it existed. Mr. Taylor has agreed to the $1,000 civil charge, which we think is appropriate in this case given the circumstances, and as such, we recommend approval of the project.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Watkinson by members of the commission? Ms. Everett?
So I know this was 15 years ago, but how does it work in terms of, talking to the contractor? Or is the contractor responsible for holding the permit, or is the landowner?
This will show you how in-depth we've gone into this investigation. Mr. Watkinson?
Yeah, we usually look at the contractors to see what involvement they might have had and what the responsibility might have been and what they would have known about the permit requirements. In this case, unfortunately, the contractor passed away since that time. And in fact, the company that he represented has been sold to another entity. While it still retains the same name, it's not the same management that runs the construction company that existed in 2004.
But that is a very good question. Further questions? Is Mr. Taylor present or his agent present today? Yes, sir. Could you come forward, please?
Good morning, Commissioner Bowman, members of the commission. Robert Simon, Waterfront Consulting, here to represent Mr. Taylor on this after-the-fact application.
You solemnly swear the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The question I have for you, Mr. Taylor, acting as the agent, are you authorized to agree to the $1,000 civil charge and the triple permit fee?
Yes, I'm Mr. Simon, the agent, and yes, I am authorized to act on Mr. Taylor's behalf.
Okay.
We accept the civil charge and the fee.
Did you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, sir.
Any questions of Mr. Simon? Thank you, Mr. Simon.
Thank you.
Is anyone here in opposition to this project? Anyone else here in support of the project? There seeing none, the matter is before the commission.
I'll move to approve 3A.
Motion made by Mr. Tankard to approve item 3A. Robert Taylor, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Minor. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next is item 3B, Tazewell County Public Service Authority.
Yes, sir. They are requesting after-the-fact authorization to retain an 8-inch sewer line installed using excavated open trench methodology, approximately 5 feet below state-owned submerged land, that included a temporarily installed cofferdam for construction access in the North Fork Clinch River, adjacent to the intersection of U.S. Route 460 and State Route 651 in Tazewell County. In this case, the agent for the service authority responsible for the permit and the construction oversight has agreed to pay a civil charge of $2,000 in lieu of further enforcement action. Back in 2016, Thompson & Litton, an engineering firm in the western part of the state, submitted a joint permit application on behalf of Tazewell County Public Service Authority. We conducted our review for that project in coordination with the Department of Game and Fisheries, and they noted that the endangered Tennessee heel splitter mussel moat could possibly be in that area, and they requested that some survey work be done to verify whether it was there or not to determine how to manage the project. And we coordinated off and on with the applicant's agent, Thompson & Litton, on the need to do that over a period of time. And we hadn't heard from them in quite some time, hadn't taken any action. Went back to them to say, hey, we're going to inactivate this file if we don't, hear from you on what you've done with regard to the survey. Well, they informed us the project had been done. They actually had the survey done for the mussel species. They did not find anything in the stream. They actually coordinated with that with DGIF. But somewhere along the line, they forgot to let us know that had been done so that we could issue our permit, and our permit was not issued. So as a result, it was constructed without the VMRC authorization. In this case, since the Thompson & Litton company was acting on behalf of the county, they were the construction oversight supervisor. We felt that they had a big role in this, and it was their responsibility, and they agreed to that. And as a result, they have, in this case, agreed to a $2,000 civil charge in lieu of further enforcement action. And it would be our recommendation that that be accepted and that we approve the permit as constructed.
Thank you, Tony. Members of the commission have any questions?
Any question?
Yes, sir. Mr. Zedrin.
Why don't they have a triple permit fee?
In this case, the permit fee would be Tazewell County, and we felt that Tazewell County really wasn't responsible here, and that would just be a additional burden on the taxpayers of Tazewell County, so we didn't recommend that be charged.
Thank you.
Further questions? Is anyone from Thompson Litton Engineering here today? How have they agreed? They agreed in writing, notarized, and signed the consent?
That's Rachel.
Well, you get everything from Tidewater to Tazewell County, don't you?
Covers the whole state.
Yeah.
The Tazewell County's Board of Supervisors approved the civil charge by vote.
Okay.
And then they have sent me an email with their signatures and an official letter saying that they also accept the $2,000 civil charge.
Okay. Tazewell County has a long way to travel, for sure. Thank you, Rachel. Further questions? Anyone in the public in opposition to this matter? There seeing none, being none, the matter is before the commission. Mr. Tankard.
I'll move to approve or item 3B, Tazewell County Public Service.
Motion made by Mr. Tankard to approve item 3B. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ballard. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Watkinson, item 3C.
Yes, sir. Item 3C is MHC Bethpage LLC. In this case, they're requesting after-the-fact authorization to retain a 6-foot wide by 348-foot long commercial open pile pier known as B-Dock with 29 wet slips, an 8-foot by 10-foot wide open-sided covered fish cleaning station, and 2 timber access walkways situated along a cove of Robinson Creek at the Bethpage Camp Resort facility in Middlesex County. The applicant has agreed to pay a $2,000 civil charge in this case, encroachment royalty of $10,520, and in this case, we would assess a triple permit fee of $300 in lieu of further enforcement action. Bethpage Campground is located in Middlesex County on Robinson Creek. There are any number of pier facilities at the campground for camp guests. It's one of those campgrounds where you have certain almost summertime residents at the campground in addition to weekly guests at the campground. And they have a number of dock facilities with piers or with slips. Back in 2016 or 2015, we got an application from Mr. Hurley, who was then the owner of the campground, asking to potentially repair and rebuild some of the pier facilities at the campground. We started our review on that project and realized that some of the piers that he needed to rebuild would require permits, and that we would need to impose royalties on those new construction or reconstruction of those piers, since royalties had not been paid on everything over the years that they had built various structures out there. Mr. Hurley was concerned about that at the time, and while we were planning to place it on the commission agenda for your consideration, he asked that it not be considered, and we pulled it off the agenda back in 2016. In 2017, Mr. Hurley then passed away in May of 2017. The campground was sold to MHC Bethpage LLC, care of Equity Lifestyle Properties. They then took over everything and management of the campground. However, prior to Mr. Hurley's passing, Pier B was constructed. It was reconstructed without authorization from the commission. We found out about it in 2019 from the county when additional building permits were sought to do some additional work at the county. So we went out and investigated. Our staff talked to the campground manager and coordinated with Equity Lifestyles Properties, and no one knew who had built the pier. The campground manager indicated that Mr. Hurley oftentimes would make arrangements through handshake agreements and a very casual sort of business approach, and there's no clear indication of who actually, from a contractor standpoint, built the pier. So in this case, we have a pier that was rebuilt pretty much in the same footprint as what had been there. Part of that pier had been authorized by commission permit years ago, but parts of it apparently had not been. It was a bit longer than originally authorized. So we felt a civil charge was still appropriate in this case, and Equity Lifestyles Properties has agreed to the $2,000 civil charge. In this case, we are assessing the royalty. There's been no dispute over that by the new property owners. And in this case, we would also recommend that there be a triple permit fee of $300. So with that, staff would recommend approval and acceptance of the civil charge payment by Equity Lifestyles, our MHC Bethpage Campground, and that you approve the project as constructed.
Thank you, Mr. Watkinson. Any questions, Tony? Thank you, sir. Is anyone from Bethpage Campground here today? Sir, would you come forward, please? Good morning. Would you raise your right hand? You solemnly swear the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
You state your name for the record, please.
Matthew Major, Facilities Manager for Bethpage and Grace Point Campgrounds.
Okay, Mr. Major, you've heard Mr. Watkinson's testimony. Does Bethpage agree to $2,000 civil charge, a royalty of $10,000, excuse me, $10,520, and triple permit fee of $300 in lieu of any further enforcement action?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Do you have anything you'd like to say to the commission?
No, I mean, yeah, Equity Lifestyle Properties purchased the property unaware of any of this had happened, but they're, willing to assume, responsibility for it.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Matters before the, anybody in opposition to this project? The matters before the commission for action. Mr. Minor.
Move to approve item 3C.
Motion made by Mr. Minor to approve item 3C is presented. Is there a second to the motion?
So moved.
Second by Mr. Tankard. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next item is closed meeting for consultation with a briefing with council. Is that necessary, council?
No, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Next item is license status review. We have one, Billy R. Hill, MRC ID 1358. Barbara?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Commissioner, members of the commission.
Officer present involved in this case? You can come forward. Is Mr. Hill present or represented?
We are.
You can come forward, counsel, with your client. I'm fine. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay.
Proceed.
Mr. Billy Hill has one new conviction, harvest oysters from a closed area, Date of offense, December 21st, 2018. Date of conviction, February 15th, 2019. Officer Kyle Jones. These are Mr. Hill's 2019-2018 licenses and permits and his one previous conviction. The Commission's guidelines for sanctions specify that one conviction of harvesting oysters or clams during a closed public season within a 2-year period should result in at least a 3-year probation. In accordance with 28.2-232 of the Code of Virginia, the guidelines suggest that Mr. Hill be placed on probation for a period of 3 years from the date of this Commission meeting, September 24th, 2019 through September 23rd, 2022. Any failure on Mr. Hill's part to obey any of the laws or regulations relating to the marine resources of the Commonwealth during the 3-year probation will result in Mr. Hill appearing before the Commission for a hearing on license revocation.
Okay. Mr. Ware, for the record, this is Mr. Mike Ware, who's counsel. Do you have any questions of Ms. Farmer, what she just presented?
No.
Okay. Will your client be testifying?
He may, but it'd be very brief.
Wouldn't be to be sworn?
Please.
Raise your right hand. You've been previously sworn?
Yes, sir.
Solemnly swear the testimony that you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Officer, proceed, please.
On December 21st, 2018, myself and my partner, Clayton Dameron, had been out patrolling the Rappahannock River in Richmond County, specifically checking commercial oyster activities in Rappahannock Area 8. The weather that day and days previous had been extremely foggy, and we had been writing multiple summonses for oystering out of the area. As we approached a small group of oysters that were working towards the lower end of Area 8, we noticed a mark on our vessel's radar that was significantly further downriver than the fleet we had approached. Based on the boundary lines of Area 8 on our GPS system, we could see that there was an object well below the lower end of Area 8. Using our radar, we made way towards the radar mark and came upon a vessel hand scraping for oysters. We immediately approached the vessel and recorded the GPS coordinates for its location and stopped the vessel. I then made contact with the operator of the vessel, who identified himself through his VMRC commercial licenses as Mr. Billy Ray Hill. I informed Mr. Hill that he was out of the area number 8, and he stated that he did not realize that. I asked him if he had any GPS devices or VMRC mobile application on his phone on board, and he stated he did not. I then showed Mr. Hill the VMRC application on my phone, and that it showed him well out of Area 8. I pointed to the group of boats working upriver from us, which at that time were barely visible due to the fog, and informed him that they were oystering very close to the lower edge of the open area. Mr. Hill stated that he was attempting to move to an area where he did not have to work so close to everybody else. The VMRC Engineering Department found Mr. Hill's vessel location to be 580 feet outside of Area 8. He prepaid his summons and was assessed a fine of $186.
Any questions by members of the commission for the officer? How was his demeanor?
He was polite and cooperative.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Mr. Ware, do you have any questions of the officer?
Officer, hand up. Officer, as we discussed, you don't believe this was an intentional act on his part?
I could easily see with the fog and working by yourself how you could get out of the area.
And he was alone?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And he stated at that time that he didn't have the GPS app on his phone?
He did.
Okay. No further questions.
All right, thank you. Proceed with your client.
Yes.
Can you put him, Mr. Ware, can y'all get before the podium so we can hear it, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hill, just state your name for the record, please, sir.
Billy Ray Hill,
Mr. Hill, how long have you been oystering?
49 years.
Is this the first violation you have for oystering?
Yes, sir.
And you saw the culling of crabs. You took responsibility of that, but that was where you were engaging young men to help you on the boat?
Yes, sir.
All right. This particular day, you didn't believe you were outside of that area, did you?
No, I didn't believe it was. No, sir.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. I'm before the board on a regular basis, so if y'all have any questions, I'm more than happy.
Any questions of Mr. Hill by members of the commission? Mr. France?
Just one question. Mr. Hill was by himself on the boat, there was no one else?
That's correct.
Any follow-up?
I just have one question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Neal. Dr. Neal.
Okay, well, both would work.
Yeah.
What have you done to enable yourself to know where you are now? I mean, do you have GPS capability now? Have you got the app on your phone?
I got a GPS on there, yes, sir.
Okay.
Further questions?
And if I may respond, he's got an old GPS. Since this incident occurred, he and I have met. We're in the process of getting him upgraded from a flip phone to the VMRC program. I've shown it, it's on my phone, I've shown him the application, how easy it is to work. So that's one of the proactives we're done and we're engaged in, so.
Thank you. Closing argument?
My only argument is that 49 years of the commission sees a lot of people that have a lot more egregious record than this man, and I think with the officer's testimony in the fog that day, I think, he's due some deference in this regard, but he's here accepting responsibility. He paid the summons off, not realizing the ramifications that would have. So the sophistication as far as this is concerned is not his.
Right. What's the pleasure of the commission? Mr. Zedrin.
Move we make this a 6 months probation.
Motion made by Mr. Zedin for a 6-month probation, second by Mr. France. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Hill, your attorney has done a good job for you, and you've done a good job for yourself by maintaining a good record. We don't want to see you back before us, okay?
Yes, sir.
Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Counsel.
good day.
Thank you, officer. That completes the license status review. Next item on the agenda is Tidewater Tank Terminal, LLC. It's the Peabody Show today.
Just one today.
Okay.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
So we're going to be in the city of Chesapeake, where Tidewater Tank Terminal, LLC, is requesting authorization to install up to 75 linear feet of riprap revetment landward of a failing bulkhead along the southern branch Elizabeth River at their industrial property located at 1324 McLeod Road in Chesapeake. This project does require a wetlands permit because the city of Chesapeake has rescinded the wetlands ordinance. The project, again, is along the southern branch Elizabeth River on an industrial facility that Tidewater Tank uses to pump leachate, so from landfills, in these tanks onto barges that are then barged downriver. So as you can see from this aerial picture, portions of the existing bulkhead are failing. You can see that there is erosion in these pockets here. The applicant is only proposing to fill the pockets in this area of the entire property. The rest will remain failed. So as you can see here, we have failing pockets. Mean high water is now able to get through the bulkhead, which is why this is in Wetlands Board jurisdiction. There's about 180 square feet of areas where mean high water can get behind the bulkhead. And in that 180 square feet, the applicant is proposing to install riprap along that escarpment to reduce the landward movement of the upland. And really the reason is because when they're tying the vessels, you can see here that there is cleats here to tie the mooring barges. Their employees walk down this area of the bulkhead, and they want to make sure that those holes are filled. So we have the drawings, which is 75 linear feet total, and riprap backfill. The project will result in 180 square feet of non-vegetated wetlands impacts. The compensation for these impacts is not deemed necessary based off of our wetlands guides, wetlands mitigation and compensation policy and guidelines. And therefore, after evaluating the merits of the project and considering all the factors contained in 28.2-1302 of the Code of Virginia and our guidelines, staff is recommending approval of the project as proposed.
Seems pretty straightforward.
Yes, sir.
Any questions? Thank you, ma'am. Is the applicant present or represented?
I don't think he was able to make it today. Tidewater Tank representative.
Do you know why he couldn't make it today?
Yes, sir. They have a skeleton crew and late night shifts. So he emailed me this morning saying he was unable to make it.
You satisfied this is a straightforward project? Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm really, there's a couple times where the applicant doesn't show up, except for the burden that it puts on staff to have to go over it again and present it over again. I think it would behoove Mr. Watkinson and staff. I want applicants here. I want them to answer questions, that the commission may have, and for them not to be here does not provide a fair opportunity for the commission to ask. That's emphasis added, but I really do believe if they can't make it, they need to have it pulled, plain and simple.
Yes, sir.
And that's still at the pleasure of the commission, whatever, but it just, after going through all of that, we can talk about it. Any questions any questions?
Yeah, well,
Mr. Tankard?
yeah, I agree with you. You know, you saw those, I have a question for you. You saw those holes behind the kind of rusty steel bulkhead there. One might think, are they going to be able to maintain the fill behind that rusty steel bulkhead in the future?
I can give you my personal opinion that this is a short-term fix to a very big long-term problem. And they are aware that any of these short-term fixes are going to require Wetlands Board permits from us, and they now have my contact information anytime that needs to happen. However, this has been a learning situation for this property owner that we need to be contacted when these things are happening.
So can I have a follow-up?
Yep, sure.
So when you say short-term, so you believe that what we might put in those holes for quote-unquote safety will be fill for the future out into the waterway?
I don't think that fill will fall into the waterway. They're going to have filter fabric with riprap, but it's not going to prevent the rest of the bulkhead from failing. So that's going to continue to happen in the areas where they're not doing this riprap revetment, which is maybe 3 times the length that is currently being fixed.
Ms. Everett?
And you said in the summary that once the larger problem's addressed in the area where the barge does not meet there potentially could be some other options, such as living shoreline. But this doesn't prevent that. This is just kind of filling the holes for temporary safety, and then those other items can be addressed later.
Exactly.
If you were sitting up here, would you approve the project?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now that Black Cat's will put you on the spot, but anyway. Is anyone here in opposition to the project? They are seeing none. The matter's before the commission. Mr. France.
Yes, I would move to approve this project, and the only reason is because of the safety issue.
Motion made by Mr. France to approve the project based on the safety issue. So note the safety issue in the minutes, if you would, please. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. France. Mr. Minor. Further discussion?
Yeah, I'm gonna vote no. I agree with you, Commissioner Bowman. If they can't be here, they shouldn't have the application in front of us.
Okay. All in favor of the application approval indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Mr. Tankard votes no. Passes. Thomas's lucky day. Next item is Shirley Contracting Company, LLC, 19-0554. Mr. Watkins?
Commissioner, could I just take a second to comment on one issue relative to the attendance of the applicant? And I agree with you. It would be most helpful if they were here in these situations. But I do want to clarify for the commission that it has been our staff practice, consistent with code, to actually hold a public hearing prior to the commission meeting for each individual wetland application where you are ultimately acting as the local board. In this case, we did that, but no one attended that public hearing either, the applicant or no one from the public. More often than not, we'll get an applicant attend those hearings, and they'll also come to this meeting as well. But I just wanted to clarify for you that we have taken that approach to hold a public hearing to try and identify any issues that we think would be helpful to know about before we get to you. And I would recommend that we continue to maintain that practice, but if at some point, based on how these projects go, you want us to change that, we'll be glad to entertain any approach to changing that procedure.
No, I think the hearing is fine, but there could be some items that change or issues that change between point A and point B.
And we don't know what you're going to ask, and
Correct.
so it is important for them to
Yeah,
be here.
so-
And we'll reiterate that to you.
And it would be of benefit to them to have a trial run to see if there's any opposition prior to the commission meeting that could be mitigated before it gets here. So
I agree.
I don't have a problem at all with the process that's being run now. I have a problem with them not being here.
I
mean, these It's a big deal. I mean, we consider it that way by virtue of the Code of Virginia. They should consider it that way as well. Now, someone had gotten sick, there'd been a problem, something like that. I can't help, it's a skeleton crew, and I can't help as far as the manning situation is concerned. So just, as I said, emphasis added, no?
We'll relay that information on to applicants.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir. Again, next item, Shirley Contracting Company, LLC. Good morning, sir.
Morning. Shirley Contracting Company LLC requests authorization to impact Difficult Run and Colvin Run in association with the Route 7 Improvements Project between Colvin Run Road and Jarrett Valley Drive in Fairfax County. The project is protested by multiple nearby property owners. The applicant and their agent are here today. Project's located in Fairfax County. This is Route 7 Leesburg Pike. Project is in its location. Again, Route 7 is in red. Here you see Difficult Run, and Colvin Run runs into Difficult Run right here at the project site. A joint permit application was received in April from Dewberry Engineers on behalf of Shirley Contracting Company to widen and improve a portion of VDOT's Route 7 highway. The widening of Route 7 from 4 to 6 lanes has been contemplated since the 1970s. Parts of it have been improved, and this is one portion that is before you today. Route 7 has been and remains one of the major east-west transportation corridors connecting Interstate 495 in the Arlington-Alexandria area with the rapidly growing Loudoun County and Fairfax. The portion of Route 7 addressed in this application extends from Colvin Run Road here to Jarrett Valley Drive, which is near 495. Impacts to state-owned submerged land associated with this project include widening of the road along Colvin Run, reconstruction of the bridge crossing of Difficult Run, the installation by directional drill method of 28 conduits beneath Difficult Run, and most important today is the relocation of approximately 1,500 linear feet of Colvin Run. Commission staff conducted our standard public interest review and received no objections from any state or federal agencies. Both the Departments of Environmental Quality and the Corps of Engineers are currently in the process of issuing their permits for the project, and had we not received opposition from the public, this project would probably be before you as a page 2 item today. This is a good slide to familiarize you with what's going on here. Now, this is Route 7. We're looking at a cross-section here, plan view up above. If you look, the gray lines here and here are the existing 4-lane Route 7. What they plan to do is they're going to shift the roadway to the south, widen both lanes to 3 lanes to make it a 6-lane highway. To do this, this is the existing Colvin Run. They're going to shift Colvin Run to the south. They're also raising the grade of the road to alleviate flooding problems that they've had in the past. The proposed relocation of Colvin Run consists of moving it from the current location where it meanders parallel to and immediately south of Route 7. The proposed stream channel is to be shifted to the south, straightened and conformed into a stabilized with articulated interlocking concrete blocks. Plans provided by Dewberry Engineers show the footprint of the roadway shifting to the south, forcing a shift of Colvin Run to the south, and encroaching on an existing 54-inch diameter county water line. The Route 7 Widening Alternatives Technical Report prepared by VDOT and the Federal Highway Administration explains the rationale for shifting the widening roadway to the south, noting the shifting of Route 7 to the south would eliminate impacts to the historic Colvin Run Mill property, as well as other environmental resources on the north side of the existing Route 7. It should also be noted in that same report, they discussed that it appears that Route 7, or that Colvin Run was relocated when the original Route 7 was built. And if you look here, you can see the straight line to the south of Route 7 that is Colvin Run. And it's logical to think that that was relocated when Route 7 was built back in the 50s or 60s. I'm going to show you a couple of different plan views of this project to help you get an idea of what's going on. This is Route 7. This is Colvin Run coming into the project. The red hatched area here is existing Colvin Run. This area to the south is the new articulated block channel stream bed. The blue line is the existing 54-inch water line, so you can see we're getting crunched here. We're moving east. Again, you can see in red the existing Colvin Run, which is right in the widened Route 7, the new articulated concrete block channel, and the blue 54-inch water line and the dotted blue line. So the articulated channel will come down here into some type of a drop structure to slow the water down before it's released into Difficult Run here. This is the bridge crossing of Difficult Run, which is also a part of the project. Here's some photos at the bottom of existing Colvin Run. This is a cross-section of the articulated concrete block that will make up the new channel. It consists of sections of concrete block that are cabled together with a cable system, and it allows plants to grow up through the articulated system. Here's the plan showing Route 7 in red. This is just to show you that the area of construction is all within property owned by Fairfax County Park Authority. The Park Authority has worked with VDOT over the past several years, and while they would prefer a natural channel design, they understand the constraints and are on board with the articulated concrete block channel. Here's a profile just to show you again the road widening, the existing channel, and the new channel to be shifted. Here we're moving down to where they're elevating the road. The blue line here is the retaining wall, the new channel, the 54-inch water line, and the same thing moving farther downstream. And I'll just go through this quickly. This is again the same thing showing the existing channel in the road, the articulated concrete block channel. And not to leave out the parts that are not protested, this is the standard VDOT plans for the bridge relocation, expansion. This is the conduit. These are the 22 conduits that go underneath Difficult Run, and a profile. This shows the bridge, and this is the conduit going beneath Difficult Run carrying the 22 cables. In response to the public notice, we received 22 emails from nearby property owners in opposition to the project. All of the protests center on the relocation of Colvin Run. So it's important to understand that none of the protests none of them are concerned with the road widening or the bridge project or the conduits. It's all centered around the relocation of the channel. And the objections seem to center on three issues. One is stormwater management and flooding. One is historic and scenic issues with the historic Colvin Run Mill, which dates back to the 1800s, I believe, and a perceived lack of coordination between the design team and the public. The Fairfax County Stormwater Planning Division provided comments. They would prefer to see a natural channel design instead of the trapezoidal ditch. The Department of Game and Inland Fisheries commented that while they always prefer a natural channel design, They understand the need for the articulated channel and that they understand the constraints that the contractor and VDOT are under to build and widen this road. They do not believe the project will adversely impact any threatened or endangered species, and they also note the degraded condition of the existing Colvin Run as it is today. DEQ staff shared information that led them to support the channelization of Colvin Run, and they stated that the alignment of the road through Colvin Run was coordinated with Fairfax County Park Authority, and the option to include natural channel design was not the least environmentally damaging alternative, because there are a lot of valued wetlands, non-tidal wetlands, that would be impacted if they had to relocate that 54-inch water line. So both the Corps and DEQ favor the articulated channel over a natural channel design. So in summary, while staff understands and appreciates the concerns of those in opposition to the channelization of Colvin Run, we also recognize the constraints of widening and improving existing roadways that have been in use for years and have become surrounded by suburban growth. State agencies, including VDOT, the Department of Game and Inland Fisheries, and the Department of Environmental Quality, along with the Corps, all typically recommend the use of natural channel design techniques when relocating or improving streams in Virginia. In this case, however, all agree that the channelization and armoring of Colvin Run has the least environmentally damaging effect on the surrounding area. Accordingly, after evaluating the merits of the project against the concerns expressed by those in opposition, and after considering the facts contained in Section 28.2-1205 of the Code of Virginia, staff recommends approval of the project with the assessment of a royalty in the amount of $4,200, and that's for the encroachment of the proposed utility conduits under Difficult Run at a rate of $3 per linear foot of encroachment. And we also recommend the following special conditions be added to the permit. One, should the state-threatened wood turtle be encountered during any of the work authorized by this permit, it would immediately be removed from danger and moved to suitable habitat in or near the closest perennial stream. The in-stream construction activities shall be accomplished during low-flow periods and within cofferdams constructed of non-erodible materials in such a manner that no more of half the width of the waterway is obstructed at any time. All areas of state-owned bottom and adjacent lands disturbed by this activity shall be restored to their original contours and natural conditions within 30 days from the state of completion of the work, and all excess materials shall be removed to an upland site. Erosion and sediment control should be in conformance with the 1992 third edition of the Virginia Erosion and Sediment Control Handbook. The permittee agrees to develop a contingency frac-out plan, which will be employed throughout construction as it relates to spills associated with the directional drilling activities. And finally, the permittee shall execute a transfer of the permit to the Virginia Department of Transportation upon their acceptance of the structures authorized herein. I'd be glad to answer any questions. The agent, their applicant, the contractor, and I believe a VDOT representative are here too.
Okay. Do you have that slide by chance, the last, your summary and recommendation? Do you have that on?
I do not. I apologize.
Okay. Any questions by members of the commission? Very thorough briefing. I've got Mr. Tanker to the right and then Mr. Ballard.
Could you maybe show a slide of the geography, sort of the map of the area that we're talking about?
You can see it's a stream valley. Everything comes down into where Colvin Run and Difficult Run meet.
So I'm somewhat familiar with this area. I do some business up there in Northern Virginia, and it seems to me that, when I hear about hardening this area, that we're going to increase the speed of water through which the water's going to be going in particularly big rain events.
Right.
Is there any consideration given to an increased sort of force of water to adjacent areas downstream?
That's been part of the plan, and if I think it would be better if we allowed VDOT or Dewberry Engineering to address that.
Okay.
I think they could answer that better than I could.
Okay. And then we could follow up if I could.
Yes, sir, please.
And then would you kind of give me a little bit better understanding of why we thought, or they thought that the natural stream wasn't the way to go? I didn't really grasp that.
In order, I think they would have to have more room to put the meanders and the natural stream channel design techniques in place. And to do that, they would have to shift that 54-inch water line, which would mean either abandoning it or digging it up and removing it and placing it further to the south. And the Corps and the DEQ both valued the non-tidal wetlands. They placed a higher value on those wetlands than they did the degraded Colvin Run stream, and wanted to preserve those non-tidal wetlands.
Mr. Ballard?
My questions were similar in nature to Mr. Tankard's. Either from yourself or the applicant, I would like to hear more about the restrictions from doing a natural channel design and what exactly the width requirements are for that and how close they are to coming to that pipeline.
I think Dewberry Engineering could probably address that.
Okay.
Ms. Everett?
I don't want to beat the dead horse, but I do know from my work too that stormwater management's a large challenge, obviously with velocity, as well as water quality. So I guess, going back, so the Corps and DEQ said we value the non-tidal wetlands more so. And DGIF said we understand the reasoning, but, and so we'll go with the hardening of the
They would routinely, they would recommend natural channel design. However, the threatened wood turtle is found in this area, but they determined that the stream was so degraded that it wasn't a very suitable habitat for the wood turtle, so they're not concerned, and they would not push for the natural channel design in this instance.
Okay.
Ms. Everett?
Thank you. So, but the Fairfax County Planning Division, it looks like based on your summary, they understand the Corps recommended, however, they still request the use of natural
They
channel
still they still want the natural channel design. Fairfax County is very proactive, and they're spending a lot of money redesigning and stabilizing streams throughout the county. So I think it's only natural that they would push for the natural channel design here.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Everett?
What would the potential, if they move that water line, what would the potential non-tidal wetland acreage?
I don't have that figure. I think Dewberry will. Putting Dewberry on the spot here, I think.
What we've got here is obviously a very technical project on
Yes,
a lot
sir.
of expertise that we do not routinely deal with as a commission. And our responsibilities, when you consider the magnitude of this type project, considering the other agencies and what they're responsible for, I can understand why the need is to ask those that have the significant expertise in these fields to get the very best information possible when we make a decision. Not that what we do is not important, but they've obviously a lot of agencies have weighed in on this one, so. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
And one last question.
Oh, no,
Thank you. I think this will be it. In terms of the summary recommendations, I saw number 1 addresses the wood turtle. Is that reflective of DGIF's kind of recommended conditions?
Yes, ma'am. They put that in their recommendations.
Okay, so your summary does include DGIF's recommendations?
Yes.
Okay.
I think our summary would reflect everyone's recommendations, what it normally does.
It does.
Correct?
We do take into account all of the agencies we request comments from.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, sir.
And I have not checked the sign-in sheet, but I think some of those in opposition are here today also.
That's fine. I will take, are those, the applicant present or represented?
Yes.
Everyone come forward because we don't know who we'll have a question for. Raise your right hand. Solemnly swear the testimony that you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Can you do me a favor? State your name and who you represent. We'll go introductions first.
Jeff Alston with Shirley Contracting.
Okay.
Steve Kuntz with Dewberry.
Okay.
Susie Engineer.
Brian Campbell with VDOT.
Okay.
Kim Larkin, I'm the agent
Okay.
with Dewberry.
Do you have anything you'd like to add to the presentation? And if you do, state
Yeah.
your name again and who you represent.
Jeff Alston with Shirley Contracting. I just wanted to let you guys know, Shirley's the design builder for the project under contract with VDOT to construct the improvements. Dewberry is part of the design build team working for Shirley. They're doing the final design of the project and also the environmental coordination and permitting for us. And Brian is with VDOT. He has knowledge of the coordination that VDOT did with the Corps of Engineers, Federal Highway Administration, and DEQ prior to the award of the design build contract to Shirley. So that's why he is here to answer any of those questions.
Sounds like a good team to answer questions. Would you like to add anything to the presentation from staff?
I would like to note that even that VDOT looked at 15 different options with DEQ and the Corps of Engineers, and even the option that was moved forward as the least environmentally damaging alternative included impacts to the forested wetlands on the south side. And through our team, we were able to shift the road slightly to the north without impacting the historic mill on the north side and minimize those forested wetland impacts even more so than what the Corps of Engineers and VDOT expected in that preliminary analysis.
Okay. Questions of the gentleman for those conditions that he was just mentioning? Mr. Ballard?
Well, I think if you could go over the natural channel design and why that's limited or not the least environmentally damaging option here, that'd be helpful.
Or do you have someone else that you would like to have answer?
Sure. So again, Brian Campbell with VDOT. During the preliminary design phases, the Park Authority, who are the stakeholders of the land, had requested for natural channel design be utilized when relocating the stream. So throughout the process, 3 years of coordination, we developed several different natural channel design alternatives, options that were presented, all of them having significant impacts. And prior to our public hearing process and the public hearing for the project, the Army Corps of Engineers just felt that there were too many forested wetland impacts. The lateral extent that was needed to do a meandering channel was it had too many wetland impacts. So they asked VDOT to look at any other alternatives that could mitigate the amount of lateral extent into those wetlands. And so the 15 different options were developed, and they looked at cost versus environmental impacts and were presented. And at the end of it all, what was found to be the LEDPA, that least environmentally practical damaging alternative, was the design that you see today.
If I could add to that, the picture on the screen actually...
State your name, please, for the
Sure.
record.
Steve Kuntz from Dewberry. My apologies. The picture that's up on the screen actually provides a fairly good picture. The area shaded in blue on the screen to the south, or the bottom of the roadway, you can see the meandering channel that is Colvin Run, and south of that are the forested wetlands that we're trying to avoid, and both the Corps and DEQ requested that we minimize impacts to.
This area.
Right. So what's shown on the screen right now is the relocation or the realignment of Route 7 and the relocation of Colvin Run as that straight channel. That straight channel right now fits just barely between the proposed retaining wall and the existing 54-inch water line. Now, Fairfax Water has allowed us to reduce that buffer from traditionally more than 15 feet adjacent to the water lines. We're now up to about 7.5 feet from the edge of that 54-inch water line. Meandering the channel, there's not enough room to get enough lateral offset in the channel to really meander it. Any meandering at all would impact the 54-inch water line, requiring its relocation further to the south and into that forested wetland area. So there's really two impacts. There's the meander itself that would increase the wetland impacts to the forested area. The relocation of the water line compounds that impact by having to move that further to the south.
Mr. Tankard?
And so my question, though, given that the water volume will be sped up through that, have you mitigated for that?
We have. So difficult run itself helps to control the velocity in Colvin Run. The peaks go through difficult run earlier, so the water itself coming out of Colvin Run will flow into difficult run. At the confluence of the two, we actually have a plunge pool at the end of that riprap or the articulated block area. So that drops into a depression essentially before it goes into the culverts that outfall into difficult run. So that will help to reduce the velocity.
Get that? Ms.
And-
Everett?
Thank you. And that's helpful for velocity. How about water quality?
Water quality is addressed throughout the entirety of the project. So from a VDOT perspective, we look at the project as a whole. So all of the additional or the multiple drainage outfalls that go into Colvin Run and into Difficult Run are being managed throughout the project. There's no specific management at this location just because of the additional impacts that it would result in.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Everett?
So I know that this is the least impactful route, but I guess with the natural channel design, you do have some of that opportunity for water quality. In this case, you don't, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So all of the roadway runoff itself is all being contained in stormwater management outfall locations throughout the project. So there's no direct runoff from the roadway at this location that goes straight into the channel. So the majority of this is just maintaining Colvin Run, which is further off to the west. Let's see if I can get here. It's maintaining flow from points off-site the project, adjacent to the project itself. In terms of the new impervious area, the additional pavement that we're putting down, the shared use paths, those are all being treated in stormwater facilities throughout the corridor. Now, the hope with the articulated blocks and the reason we have the openings and the gaps in those is over time, the intent is that material will grow up through those and help to reduce the velocity and maybe improve some of the function of that stream. But immediately upon construction, it is just the articulated block.
Mr. Ballard?
Can you talk a little bit more about what I believe was, you stated, a plunge pool and how that would slow velocity? I guess my question is, typically when I see something like that, your rate of flow temporarily slows, but then when it spills over into the next device, it's essentially the same rate of flow.
It is. So initially, the depression area that we're providing, that plunge pool, will control the velocities. Once the water rises up to the point that that would no longer function, it's actually the point that difficult run flows are higher and going through the bridge. And so the water then is going into difficult run and not just essentially blowing off site.
Okay.
Further questions? Thank you. We may have further questions at the end, but please stick around. Anyone else in support of this project? Anyone in opposition to this project? Yes, sir. Will you all please come forward? Good morning.
Morning.
Yes, sir. We'll swear you both in. Solemnly swear the testimony you give be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Come forward, please. State your name for the record, please.
My name is Mark Eric.
No, you're okay.
Mark Eric Knudsen. I'm with the Great Falls Citizens Association. I'm also with the working group, and I've been working on Route 7 since I started a working group, which all this was preceded by me working for 10 years with VDOT on the intersection of Georgetown Pike, a historic byway, first engineered road in America to be done with that. We're trying to protect that.
Well, so I understand, did you work for VDOT or you worked on? Got it, understand. I just,
They might consider against. Okay, I just trying
we'll
to, you
figure
said
that
to be
out.
truthful.
Helen likes us.
Anyways, so after working on the Georgetown Pike, I realized there was going to be a problem all the way down for the next 6 miles of they've been working their way down Route 7. So I put together 4 jurisdictions and talked to VDOT, and we got them to make a working group. And since 2012, we've been working with VDOT on this group. And one of the objections that was in your thing is the lack of communication. We've been working up until late 2017, even into 18, on a meandering stream. And there's documentation that they've been talking to Army Corps of Engineer and other people about all these other projects, and we've not been given the information on that. Once it went to a design build, which was when Dewberry Davis and Shirley got involved,
that we were sworn to secrecy, and things happened that we didn't even know about. So that's one of the objections that we have, that the public communication was cut off on a lot of this, okay? Now, the main objection we have to this is the information and the data that they're basing all their data on is on a 25-year plan. And the 25-year plan, if even FEMA, and their IG in 2007 said that more than 58% of FEMA's flood maps were outdated. So there's one fact, that they're using outdated maps, according to FEMA. All right, the other thing is that they said only 3 times since 1953 has this road been overflowed, all right? Well, they stopped at 2011, because since 2011, this road has been overflowed several times, and several times in 1 year. So they're not using anything current. And we're talking from 2011, so the last 10 years, they're not using any of the data. All right, you can look on several websites about how the weather has increased 78% in the Northeast Corridor, and this is right at the bottom of the Northeast Corridor. If you drop into the southern, it's 57%, so it's still in a high range of increase of rain in this area. The only way that they've been able to make this, all right, first of all, the Army Corps of Engineers, the DEQ, Fairfax County, and the Park Authority all preferred the meander and stream. They had to go back and find ways to make it work so they didn't have to do the meander and stream. They've accomplished this by buying 2,000 feet of stream credits and wetland credits. So these wetland credits don't do anything for this local area. They're put in a fund, and they just sit there until somebody else comes up with either a study to figure out how they can beat rules and regulations.
We're familiar with those wetlands.
Okay,
Yes,
all right,
sir.
sorry.
It's okay.
I don't want to take any more time than I should. The flood metrics for a 25-year storm, we don't understand why they're using that, because the 100-year storm basically says that a house in a 25-year storm would be a 30% chance of being flooded in 100 years. That's a 100-year storm, is a 30% chance. A 25-year storm would be even more. That'd be more like 70%, according to the statistics that I've found.
Sir, where do you live in proximity to this project?
Well, I've been driving on this road since it's a 2-lane road. I live approximately a mile downstream, but also off to the left.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. When I used to drive by this place when it was a two-lane highway, which was this part, the second part of this, making a 4-lane road, was done in late 69 and the 70s, not in the early 60s. All right. When they built that part, we started having flooding problems with Colvin Run. I mean, difficult run, would flood before, but there was a large floodplain.
Okay.
But VDOT themselves admitted that the bridge is too short. They built a large causeway, and that's where part of the problem comes in, besides the increase in water that we're getting. All right. What happens is, if you look at the map that's up there, sorry, I wish I had a pointer, but Colvin Run is our Carper's Farm Way is the road to the south, to the left of the green area. Okay, Colvin Run Road is coming down from the north at that angle. Oh, thank you. Okay. So this is Colvin Mill Run coming down, and it hits and it does this all the way down. Now, it used to go across here, and original Route 7 would cross over this way. All right, but then they did the 2-lane road and they made a bridge. And then when they came in and made it 4-lane, they made this big causeway across here. Now, what happens is this road, the culvert for this road, is the first choking point. So the water comes over this and gets on the road and comes down here. But when Difficult Run is flooding, it also backs up the creek here, all along here. So then you have water coming over the causeway along here. Now, this, it gets to 3, 4, and 5 feet above the road. Now, when we were talking with VDOT over the years, they said that the new bridge would solve that problem. All right, we would not get the flooding over here. But with this culvert here, and there's also another culvert right here where there's a little pumping station, I guess for the water line or whatever, those two choke points. Now, what they've done since they built this in the early 70s, late 69, 70, I know it was 69 because we were drag racing on the uncompleted road, and I graduated in 69, so it was built in 69.
As a former state trooper, that doesn't bother me at all. Go ahead.
Well, nobody was on the road. It was before it was completed. Anyways, the water comes up and fills up this whole area. So now when you get this dam here and here, the water's filling up over here. But also, the water coming down Difficult Run is too much for the bridge. So that's backing up Difficult Run. During this time, since the 60s, this area would flood, and it's all floodplain, and it would work. This meandering stream has worked forever, all right, and doing what it's supposed to do, which is if it's not a 100-year storm, which we're getting now, but let's say a 25-year storm, it slows the water down, all right? It floods this area, and this area is perfect to be flooded. It's got grass thicker than you can walk through almost. I've got pictures if you guys want to see them. The trees all in this area are no more than an 8-inch diameter. They've all grown up since I've been driving through there. When I started driving through there, even after it was built, you could see the houses behind them. You can't see them now because those trees have grown up. So I'm questioning this protected area. It used to be a cow pasture. It's all happened since then, but you know, I'm not the expert there.
Sir, can we get, I don't want to rush, but at the same, let me finish. We're getting into technical minutia as far as design is concerned.
Yes.
That quite honestly, I'm not sure is in the purview of this commission. What we need to do is channel your concerns to what the problem is as far as what we're responsible for under the Code of Virginia, which is the subaqueous bottomlands.
Okay, the only way, first of all, the data they're using is wrong. Okay, that's my major concern, all right?
Okay.
Second of all, the only way they've come up to fix this, and it's a cost estimate issue, is to buy credits that won't help recovery of what's going on here, all right? Also, they're doing what VDOT always does, and like I said, I've been dealing with them for almost 20 years now, is they stop the jurisdiction. You ask them what's happening 50 feet off an intersection, and they don't know. That's not part of their jurisdiction. Same thing is going on here. What happens in this place will affect Difficult Run and all the other streams that are going into Difficult Run between here and the river. This area is a bio area for all stream beds. That is the key that feeds the Potomac, that feeds the Chesapeake Bay. All right, that's what we're trying to protect.
Okay.
This area all is also on wells. All right, so that's another reason we have a special concern in this area. We have to protect it from all the waste that's coming down from the Reston area on impermeable surfaces and the stuff that's coming off the oils and stuff. That's why we want these grasslands and this meandering stream to slow it down, to give a chance for that stuff to get out of the water. Now, if you look at the data that they're using and you set up pond at the end of the creek, our major concern is with this straight line shot. The water that we get now is fast and furious for an hour, and then it slows down. But the water keeps coming because it's fast and furious for the whole area, and then it's funneled into these streams. If the streams aren't meandering and slow it down, if they're cutting a straight shot, they're just going to come down. That straight shot T-bones into Difficult Run. So they were saying that the main water stream is Difficult Run. Yes, but when it comes off, a lot of Reston, which has impermeable surface, comes down Coffin Mill. So it's going to hit at this T-bone, and it's going to cause all sorts of stir. If the pond they're talking is going to slow it down, it's done on a 25-year storm basis, that's not going to work in our system. So it's going to pollute, cause so much convergence that it's going to kick up a lot more silt, and the silt's going to kill off the bio areas. So that's our concerns, all right? So my buddy would like to talk too.
Sounds good.
But we've read all the reports that we now have. We've had about a month and a half, 2 months to prepare for this, to find all the reports and to go through all the stuff. And we've proven that what they're doing is not based on what's going on.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, could you state your name?
Sure, yes. Tim Thompson. Good morning,
Mr.
Chairman,
Thompson.
Commissioners.
Sir.
I live, if you're looking at you
Yep.
got the same picture, okay.
Yep.
If you look at the thing, I live right where, in the lower left corner, where the blue stream, excuse me.
You could use that mouse.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay,
There you
great,
go.
thank you. Oh, I'm left-handed, I'll do it this way. I live right about in here, and I used to take my son, whose name is Cameron as well, who's now getting a master's in environmental sciences over in China and teaching environmental sciences at a boarding school. We used to go down here and spend a lot of time. Difficult run, you could stand on either side and hold it. Now that the bed is so degraded, now he was graduated high school in Langley in 13, graduated Roanoke at 2017. But back in those times, back in 04, 05, 06 timeframe, you could put a foot on either side of difficult run. Now it's about 6, 8 feet wide in areas. You got trees crashing in. You're going to get vegetation, pollution, silt, and everything else running down in. Now, in 17, I lost my car right here at this light. I got stuck, and as Eric just said, right there, that water goes underneath Carper Farm Road. It has a culvert that goes underneath the road, and that's the only way in and out to 300 houses. And the water is coming so fast because it's not being able to meander anymore. They want to straighten it. It hits, and then it just spouts up. The roadway of Carper Farm feeds into Route 7 at the light, and then it rolls down toward the middle of the road, and the ditch, or the lowest point, is about right where the pointer is, the big red dot. And 2 to 3 feet, 5 feet, I'm not sure what it is. I do know that in the last, since spring, we've had big storms, 200, 300 years. Route 7 has been closed a total of almost 19 hours because of flooding. In both directions, cars could not go. And as the gentleman said, this is the major throughway from Loudoun County. It actually goes all the way to Winchester, all the way to Tyson's Corner, which is supposed to be the Commonwealth's economic engine, la-di-da-di. When we first started this project, I'm a member of the working group. We first started the working group back in 2011 with Garrett Moore, who was our northern person for VDOT at the time before he got moved to Richmond and just retired a couple of weeks ago. We took a study, and there were 6 to 7% of the cars were out of state, predominantly Maryland, coming out of the Leesburg area, Route 7 or 17, excuse me, 15, south and hitting 7 and coming down. Now that number's up around 22.3, 22.4%. Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Maryland cars. And a lot of non-Fairfax cars, because Fairfax does not have the sticker decal on the windshield, whereas other things, the city of Winchester, Clark County, et cetera, do. So when we're sitting out there and we're doing traffic counts, we're not using VDOT's 2011 and 2012 and adding 6%. We're physically out there in our cars doing traffic counts, looking at these things as they come through. It's just building up and building up and building up. And so when you close Route 7 for an hour, it's a mess. You close it for 19 hours over 3 different times since the spring, it gets even worse. Cars are now running through neighborhoods, 25 miles an hour, 3 elementary school bus stops in my neighborhood. We've had two bikes crushed and a dog hit. Luckily, it lived. But people running through have been getting tickets by Fairfax County Police. Thank goodness we finally got them in there. The average speed when they put the things in, trying to get 3-way stop signs and speed humps, speed bumps, various things, 48 miles an hour rushing through, trying to come up to Route 7 and hang a right just about the edge of the stream where Route 7 hits your border up there, to come on down. It's a safety issue. It's a pollution issue.
Sir?
And we should not be having this kind of problem. Yes, sir, I'll take any questions or
No.
leave.
Yeah, thank you. The safety issue under the Highway Safety Act and Highway Safety Administration issues is out of our purview. Yeah.
I'm just pointing it out.
I
It's one more
understand.
thing.
I understand.
With the Chesapeake Bay Act, that the federal government passed, which is now going to be part of the problem here, Fairfax County at their Board of Supervisors meeting in March and April passed a thing that projects have got to adhere to the 2014 rules, not the 1990 rules that these people want to do when they did their design. They think they're grandfathered. That's not finished yet, being discussed upstairs, up in the judicial system. But those things have got to be adhered because Fairfax County does not want to be fined hundreds of millions of dollars that we taxpayers would then have to pay. You all don't want the Bay or the Potomac River, which would lead to the Bay, to do the same thing with your shell fishing, your sport fishing, and everything else. We're trying to protect the Bay. We're trying to protect the Potomac River, and this problem won't do it. It has to be Milan. Now, all they got to do, per the Army Corps of Engineers, and we've got people talking to them about this, on the federal level, two U.S. senators and a congressperson are all there talking to the Corps. All they got to do is pay the $2 million to move that 54-inch water main, and they got plenty of room between the highway and the water main to do the meandering. Leaving that 54-inch water main there where it is, the Corps said, no, we can't do that. Our thing that we did for months or years was recommending the top 3 of the 10 priorities that the Corps gave us, not the 7th or 8th on the list of 10 that is being proposed and was shown to you earlier. I thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Anyone else in opposition to the project? The applicant or agent has 3 minutes to rebut and wrap up, and then the matter will be before the commission if you decide to do so.
Yeah, I would just like to say that we have tried to coordinate. We meet regularly with the working group. We've met twice since the project started, and VDOT had met with the working group more than 17 times prior to the start of the project. The straight stream channel design that was with the lining was discussed in meeting number 17 with VDOT, and we have the minutes of that meeting showing that the gentleman that spoke here were in attendance at that meeting. So that was back in August of 2017. We also had some public outreach in May where we presented the project elements, including the stream channel, in 2 different public meetings to more than approximately 275 members of the public. So we are trying to make an effort to get the word out and make sure that people understand what it is we're trying to build and what those impacts are.
Any further questions? Thank you, sir. Well, it appears to me, in looking over a very detailed briefing, good job, the explanation, it appears to me there's a lot of difference in opinion in engineering and design of the roadway, more so than the potential impacts that are under the purview of this commission. I'll just say that it looks like an issue that's somewhat parochial in nature, defined by territory and some objection. At the same time, the matter is before the commission for discussion and action. Mr. Minor.
Move that we approve staff recommendations.
Motion made by Mr. Minor, seconded by Mr. Zedrin. Further discussion? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Everett.
Yeah, I'd just like to make the comment that while in this case it sounds like there was an environmental impact from the non-total wetlands based on the Corps and DEQ, in the future I just would encourage the engineer and the VDOT to obviously try to get that natural channel design for water quality, water quantity, as well as habitat. So I just wanted to make clear that value I see in that.
Point well made. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is Adam J. Sterling, Oyster Planning Ground Application 2018160. Mr. Badger, good morning.
Good morning.
Proceed, sir.
Yeah, it does show up, okay. Adam Sterling is requesting authorization to lease 10 acres of oyster planting ground in Revels Island Creek. This is in Lower Accomack County on the seaside of the eastern shore. The project is protested by an adjacent highland leaseholder. A little overview of the eastern shore, county line, Exmoor, and the project is located right in this area here, just north of the county line. Closer view, showing Revels Island, Barrier Island. It's about a mile from the inlet and about 4.5 miles from Quimby. Just a photo, 2007 photo. Channel coming out of Quimby, which is where the majority of the activity starts from, comes out, wiggles right through here, comes on out, and then out to the inlet. Quimby has quite a bit of aquaculture, clam aquaculture going on. It's a lot of it in this general area here, and there's some down through here and across through here. And this is Revels Island itself. It's quite interesting to see the boats when they come in loaded. Quite impressive with all the activity and nick clams that are coming in. This is a little closer view. The depths in this area, on this area, is a plus 1 foot above mean low, and the deepest parts is about 10 feet at mean low water in the channel itself. The bottom is mostly mud and sand mix. It's firmer on the western side than it is on the eastern side, and there is oyster rocks all along the shoreline here, and most, if not all, of the rocks are intertidal and on Revels Island fee simple property. As you can see, that the area that's above low water has quite a few clam nets on it here. The green is Mr. Sterling's application. We received this application in December of last year, and it's bounded on the north by J.C. Walker Brothers, east by mean low water, wherever that happens to be, south by Walker Brothers, and vacant bottom on the west. In Mr. Sterling's lease use plan, he intends to use the lease for traditional shelling of the bottom, while cultivate existing shellfish resources. Mr. Sterling has 8 applications on the seaside of Accomack for a total of a little less than 400 acres, and 2 of his 8 applications are protested. The other application that's protested is on the other side of Revels Island, and it's protested again by J.C. Walker Brothers, but that's not here in front of you today. This is an aerial that I took back in 2016 at approximate low tide. You can see this big peninsular spit exposed at low tide and attached to Revels Island. This is Revels Island. This is a mudflat that is owned by the Commonwealth of Virginia. It's not fee simple property, and it is under lease by J.C. Walker Brothers. And that is not a barge. That's just a reflection. Another aerial from 2017, again showing the clam beds that are there on the fee simple property. This is just my rendition of where the leases are, Walker Brothers and Walker Brothers down here. In response to a public interest review, we did receive a protest back in January of this year from J.C. Walker Brothers. They believe a large portion of Mr. Sterling's application is above low water on the Nature Conservancy's property, highland property of Revels Island. The Walkers lease from the Conservancy the intertidal area around Revels Island. They also have concerns with navigational access to their fee simple clam beds and request the Commission not lease within 100 feet of mean low water along Revels Island Creek. Basically, they need access, or would like to have access to their beds from this area here. They would come down and come in here. If we leased anything in this area, it may impact their navigation. Just a ground shot. This is Revels Island Creek. You're looking kind of to the southeast. And you can see this peninsula is obviously intertidal. It's not quite at low water. If you look closely, you can see some of our stakes that marked what we were comfortable leasing just beyond the low water mark. We always try to give the benefit of the doubt to the highland property owner when we were staking oyster ground. And the channel itself, you can see other stakes. It's just beyond that. It's 15 to 20 feet, the distance between low water and the edge of the channel. Next photo will be on this other side, looking over here. Again, not quite at low tide. Low water is generally out here. That's the Rebels Island Creek over there. And our summary and recommendation, I'll leave this up and maybe go through it in a little bit. There are two sections of the code that address the Commonwealth's ownership and the private ownership of property. Under 28.2-1200, all the beds in the bays, rivers, creeks, and the shores of the sea within the jurisdiction of the Commonwealth shall remain the property of the Commonwealth. And also pursuant to 28.2-1202 of the code, the rights and privileges of owners of riparian land shall extend to the mean low water mark, but no farther. We have been to this site on 3 different occasions to establish mean low water, and also to an area just beyond mean low water that we would feel comfortable leasing. There we did find an intertidal peninsula, which was right through here, that was within the requested lease and is part of Rebels Island, owned by the Nature Conservancy. The Commission may only lease state-owned lands and cannot therefore lease the fee simple intertidal peninsula or any other similar areas. We did find a 15 to 20 foot wide subtidal area between mean low water and the drop off the Rebels Island Creek that could smort shellfish. This, however, could block navigational access to J.C. Walker Brothers riparian clam beds and that they lease from the Nature Conservancy. So what we did, we found an area through here about 15 to 20 feet that is suitable for leasing or growing shellfish, but it would impact access to J.C. Walker Brothers clam beds in this area here. We also found a small area inside the peninsula, east of the peninsula, that is channel water mean low. The bottom is a soft mud, and access to this area would be across either TNC property or J.C. Walker Brothers leased oyster ground. Leasing this area could create access issues between the leaseholders and destroy existing clam beds. When we were out here trying to really determine low water on this other side, we couldn't even get back here. It was so muddy we couldn't walk it. And we tried to come in around this way, and we were scared that we would run across someone's nets and destroy their nets. So access back into this little 1.5 acre area would be very difficult. Therefore, based on the above concerns, staff cannot support leasing either the 20-foot wide strip west of the fee simple peninsula or the small cove area east of the peninsula. Staff therefore recommends denial of the application. I believe the applicant and the protestants are here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions of Mr. Badger? Mr. Tankard.
I have one question. You know, in the past, Mr. Badger, didn't y'all, for riparian landowners, grant almost a fudge zone that you used to assign a number to that you wouldn't even bother to put in as far as a lease of state bottom might go?
We put a fudge factor in when it comes to determining mean low water, yes.
Right.
We would normally give 1 to 2 inches.
I think that's a tolerance.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes, that's it. Thank you, sir. And it's not give, I guess you're right, because it's still owned by us wherever mean low water happens to be. But since we're not doing a 19-year study of mean low water, the best we can come up with is to determine where we're comfortable leasing.
Right. But that, excuse me, a follow-up question.
Yes, sir.
That tolerance was somewhere in, I mean, you would come off of mean low water.
Oh, yeah, we would be we'd be channelward of mean low water. That's
By
correct.
a certain amount oftentimes.
It varies. It depends on the slope of the shoreline. 2/10 can make, in some places on the seaside, acres of elevational change.
Mr. Ballard?
I believe I've heard reference to at some point some sort of statute or regulation relating to coves and a certain minimum width between two pieces of land and not leasing that area.
Yeah, there's a memorandum that Mac Rogers had done probably in the 80s, and it goes off of a code section that addressed if you had property that was, if you had a peninsula or a cove area, I guess is really what it was, a cove area that at the mouth was less than 300 feet wide at low tide, we would not lease inside that. We didn't give up ownership, but we wouldn't lease inside of it. And that's if the ownership is by one individual or one group. In this case, that would be the case also for the small area. But that's policy in this particular case, because really what the actual law states that you've got to have a King's Grant survey, basically, to do that. But by policy, Mac Rogers, and we've been we're holding to that. We have been.
Further questions? Just so I understand the diagram.
Okay.
The blue, the lighter blue, the aqua blue, yep, that's the desired lease, correct?
That's correct.
Please tell me again what those red lines for those, what are they?
That's the mean low water mark
Uh-huh.
on the west side of the peninsula, and the mean low water mark on the east side of the peninsula, the intertidal clam area. And it would continue on down here some way.
And what's contained between those two lines?
Right here?
Yeah.
Clam beds.
So, the lease that's applied for circumnavigates the clam beds, goes in behind the clam beds, and then goes along the shoreline?
It would. When Mr. Sterling applied for it, I don't know if he realized, and I don't think we did when we took the application, where low water was through here. So he was applying to low water wherever that happened to be.
Okay. Further questions? Mr. Tankard?
So what you're saying is Mr. Sterling really didn't have an understanding of this area? I mean, it seems like to me that the photographs you show clearly indicate that this is part of Rebels Island. Why would he want a lease that's on private bottom?
Well, if the application itself, which is in your packet, it says to mean low water, wherever that happens to be. So we were not going to lease above it. I think the question was this below low water? And at the time, we didn't know when the application was taken. So often, it's not until you get out in the field. Now, could Mr. Sterling have gone out there and taken a look and gotten a better understanding? Maybe so. You can ask him, he's here.
Further questions? Thank you, Mr. Badger. Applicant present, represented?
Yes.
Yes, sir. You come forward, please. Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony that you give be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Can you state your name for the record, please?
Adam Sterling.
Yes, sir. Can you explain to us why you want the lease and some of the questions that have been proposed?
I applied for what, I obviously didn't do the mapping, the VMRC did the mapping. I applied for what I was allowed to apply for, and then this is what come of it.
Okay. I guess the question would be, had you known that the map looks like this with the small amount of available ground, if it's even available ground, would you have applied for the lease?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
My application states to mean low water, that's all I'm asking for. Wherever that may be, I don't have a plat map for this particular lease, nor have I been able to obtain one to find where that is.
Okay. Further question, Mr. Ballard?
What are you planning on using the lease for?
Just a conventional oyster, shell and reshell, harvest what is there, just building rocks. Maybe at a later date add some floating cages if that would be able, to navigate through there. Mr. Badger stated it's 10 feet at low water. It's That's plenty of water for anybody to get through.
And you have 8 other leases that you've applied for?
Yes, that's
Is
correct.
that correct?
I was thinking it was more like 12, but
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit about your plans in general and what you're trying to do, whether you're engaged in the industry currently or trying to get into it?
I was originally a seafood wholesaler. Then I obtained a license and started doing wild oysters, the diploids, not triploids. And that's my plan to stay with the wild side of it.
And have you been out to this area?
I have since then.
Okay, but not when you originally applied for it?
When I originally applied for it, I went out there and there was no stakes, maybe 1 or 2 here and there, but since the protest is coming in, it's pretty well staked off to what the protesting is claiming. But again, I have no plat map to go off of.
And do you see where this would be a very unconventional lease? And of my knowledge of the leasing system, we have very few leases that are that small in channels like that around nature preserves. And I guess I'm asking, why would this be a good area for the state to lease?
So this is unconventional area, is what you're stating, but yet there is an operation going on as we speak?
With the smaller sections of lease bottom, tiny little triangles.
I don't know the area off the top of my head, but I mean, some places as small as 10 feet are very prosperous, and some places that are 100 feet have little to no life.
Further questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else here in support of this application? Anyone here in opposition to the project? Morning, sir.
Good morning.
State your name, please.
Brian Plumley here for J.C. Walker Brothers, and Mr. Tom Walker's here to speak as well. Hey, I can pull up these photos.
Mr. Plumlee, just for the record, you're a member of the Virginia State Bar, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
And I'm counsel for J.C. Walker Brothers on this opposition.
Thank you.
I just have 2 or 3 photographs I think are helpful, and I'll make a brief statement, and Mr. Walker can come up and also make a statement. Could do that.
Is that you? Figure out what.
Is that my drive there?
I don't know. Is that right here?
I think that might be it.
At the bottom?
Yep.
There you go. Maybe.
Something's going to happen. Click one more time. There we go. Yeah, I think that's fine. And I'm not going to go over these photographs too much, but they may be helpful. I know this is sideways and it's got everybody's head cocked the wrong way. Anyway, let me state just for the record, my name is Brian Plumley. I'm speaking in opposition to the oyster lease application 2018-160 for Adam Sterling, which encroaches on working tidal flats across the grounds of the Nature Conservancy, which have been leased to my client, J.C. Walker Brothers, for 40 years in some parts. Also, the request violates 28.2-629, which gives the TNC rights at least to the middle ground. It sounds like the policy of the agency is to give the entire cove that's proposed as well. This application doesn't further the interests of the Commonwealth to work productive grounds. It advances this applicant's attempt to put a chokehold across operating grounds. And I have here, and I can hand it up, and I know it will become the evidence of the VMRC, but this is a letter dated January 4th from Mr. Sterling saying that he's telling J.C. Walker Brothers and any employee, affiliate, or acting representative to refrain from activity upon this proposed lease ground that he has made right here. So he is already telling this operation to stop. And if you're not aware of what's going on out here, I think I want to give you a little bit of an inkling of the operation, because it's pretty impressive what's happening. Now these are shifting tidal flats, and they're difficult to reach at times and work, and they're difficult to survey. I went to these grounds, and it's pretty clear when you observe these grounds that this applicant is just making an effort to threaten the operations out there. It's not necessary to work these grounds for wild oysters. What you have here, no one ever contemplated an application for the adjacent waters around the TNC and what they've leased to J.C. Walker Brothers. Supporting that ground right there is a 33,000 square foot facility that's inland, where there are a hatchery, there are nurseries growing these clams, and 300 to 500 million clams are being planted and oystered by a company that's been in operation for 130 years in the Commonwealth, considered one of the oldest, if not the oldest, seafood companies. And simply because this gentleman has found a gap in this GPS map, he's made an application. He just said he hadn't really analyzed what was going on out there. But he doesn't stop from threatening this company that's employed many people in this state for a long time, many decades, from just cutting it out. And I don't think anyone ever contemplated that would ever be done over all this time. Over all the years that this company has been producing clams, millions of clams for the Commonwealth to be sold by this company. Now, I'm not going to go on and on about it because Tom can certainly talk about his operation far better than I. But standing out there, you immediately grasp there is no way to have a productive oystering operation in the vicinity of these clam beds without walking through these clam beds, without threatening these clam beds. And there is no way for him to continue the clam operation, for J.C. Walker Brothers to continue this clam operation under threat that they're going to lose access.
Can you
Yes.
do me a favor, enter that into the record? If your council has indicated to me that if you're demonstrating that as an instrument, that we probably should go ahead and enter it into the record.
And we're talking about the letter?
Correct.
Yes, if I can hand that up.
Thanks. Well, and in the interim, and while I'm looking sideways.
I know. I don't know how to turn the thing.
No, that's fine. Are we talking about, Hank, Mr. Badger, are we talking about the area that's available between those nets and that shoreline?
Both sides.
Right here is the one little 15-foot width he's talking about, and then in this cove. And we've already talked about the policy of this agency not taking this cove. The riparian owner is the Nature Conservancy. Well, the prior owner of this island was the Walker family. They sold it to the Nature Conservancy, or donated it, however it was done, however many years ago in the 50s and 60s. This cove is owned by the Conservancy. This property is leased. This is fee simple property leased to J.C. Walker Brothers directly from the Nature Conservancy. And this proposed lease that you see that's come before you today, it appears to the world just to be the little blue area on this GPS. It doesn't give you this history. You have to go out here by water and take a look at it and walk through the mud and see how difficult it is to get out here and drag these nets and to do all this work and to pull 400 million clams out of this area. So we support, clearly we support the recommendations that Hank has made, and we appreciate everyone's time, but felt it was at least important to come up and explain the intricacies of this operation and all that's involved in the employment and the work that's going on out here. So when somebody just simply puts in a lease application without much behind it and begins to send letters demanding that no one sets foot upon that proposed lease area, that creates a ripple in a company like this with a lot of importance to this state. So I'll leave that and let Mr. Walker come up now and make his point as well. Thank you very much.
Council has a question for you, Mr. Plumley.
What are the black things?
So those are the clam beds.
They're the nets. Each one is an individual segmented net with the clams contained therein.
So they're held down in place while that water passes over.
All right, and that's what your client is running right there?
That's correct. And so you know this is a king's grant. okay, going back, that was given to the Nature Conservancy, this whole area, all right? And Walker Brothers has this ground out here, has this ground in front that's leased directly from the Commonwealth. And so, in essence, below mean low water, yes, the state has technically leasable grounds, but it's within the authority of this commission and its duty to make sure that the grounds that it's leasing do not interfere with ongoing operations. And that's what would happen if this lease were to be granted. And frankly, we'd ask that it be taken off the GPS as available leasable ground, because certainly this could happen again. Point in fact, my client applied for lease grounds around this area and was previously told they couldn't have it because of this cove, this law about not being able to lease to the center line of a cove. It's 28.2696, I believe, is the code section. But that was a rejection that happened years ago, and I won't plot everyone through all of that detail, which would take way too long to explain in an intelligent manner. But this is an inappropriate request, and we'd ask that we follow the recommendations of the staff. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, sir. Morning still. Just raise your right hand. Solemnly swear the testimony you give today be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
You state your name for the record, please.
Thomas Walker.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, commission members, Commissioner Bowman. My name's Tom Walker again. I'm here today with my CEO for J.C. Walker Brothers, Ann Gallivan. Jill Berry is here for the Nature Conservancy. And how do we move these pictures around?
Mr. Badger?
I need just those land-based pictures.
Mine or?
No, ours.
There you
We
go.
have 4 pictures on here.
There you
Just
go.
turn that. Okay, keep going. No, not that. Keep going. Right there. Right there. Thanks. I got it now. Let's see how we do it.
Hey.
J.C. Walker Brothers has been producing aquaculture clams for approximately 35 years. As Mr. Pumley stated, we're currently operating on around 35,000 square feet of covered facility, which includes clam hatchery, clam nursery facilities, packaging facilities, but not including storage or office space or such as that. Employment. We have about 30 full-time employees. We have 6 cooperative ventures, which entails about another 25 jobs. And I'm currently selling about a dozen independent companies a year, maybe half of which were the primary supplier of seed for those operations. As Mr. Pumley stated, our annual production for seed clams going into field nurseries is approximately 300 million clams a year. Let's see now. A little clarification on this. First, we support staff recommendation. Mr. Badger and his staff have done a very accurate assessment of the situation at Rebels Island. The photograph, again, that we're looking at to the western side, you can see this is dated August 31st, approximately 3:30 p.m. The Watchaprig station that day turned in a minus 3.7 inches below mean low water. Mr. Serlin's application coming up against low tide, against that flat, if we're not granted a wharfage from the state of Virginia to access this tidal flat, it would really be an extreme hardship for our company. This particular area is currently holding around 11,000 linear feet of net. This is a time, flow, volume operation. Clams are planted in August, September. They're removed from this area in April. This is reducing my net exposure in the field by over 90%. to harbor these clams in a specific area at a higher density for the first winter they're in production. So they're planted in September and August, they're removed in March and April, and each plot you see is going to split about 12 to 1 on linear footage. This whole process of wintering clams for the Virginia clam industry was done by two separate companies, and this is where it was done 20 years ago. This is not a VIMS program, this is a private industry program. Without this, I don't operate. I really support Mr. Sterling's application in deep water adjacent to this flat. If he wants to do traditional oysters, I'm in total support of it. But we need that 100-foot access way to get in and out to do all the maintenance on this flat. J.C. Walker Brothers, in the history of the company since I've been involved, and I presume prior to my involvement, we've never protested a lease. I don't really protest this one in any way, shape, or form as long as we're guaranteed wharfage. Unfortunately, I think this commission is going to continue to deal with this issue as you move forward with other applications. I think that's all I've got.
Any questions of Mr. Walker by members of the commission? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Walker.
One more comment?
Yes, sir.
I would respectfully ask that Mr. Sterling's letter not be put into the record. The industry needs young people coming in. I support his application in the right area. I support his applications going forward if they're inappropriate. I think he made a mistake to write the letter, and I do not think it should go in the record and maybe cause him hardship in the future. So if that could be removed, as owner of J.C. Walker Brothers, I would request that it be done.
I understand your comment. That's very gallant upon you. Your request is overruled. Thank you. Mr. Sterling, anyone else in support of this application wishes to be heard? Mr. Sterling, you have 3 minutes to rebut or respond, or no comment? Okay, matters before the commission for discussion and action.
Move that we approve staff recommendations.
Motion made by Mr. Minor to approve staff recommendations. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Zedrin. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions?
Abstain.
One abstention. Thank you. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda will be moving into fisheries. Item number 11, request for emergency amendment pertaining to amberjack and cobia. Mr. Gear. Hurry up, Hank. Got things to do.
Jennifer, where is it? Presentation right there. Come on. Yeah, we can hit that.
Thank you, ma'am.
I will make this as quick as possible. Good morning, Commissioner, members of the Commission. This is an emergency amendment to Chapter 4 VAC 20-510-10 pertaining to amberjack and cobia to address closing state waters as a result of the recent announcement closing federal waters for commercial harvest of cobia. For the third year in a row, NOAA Fisheries has announced this closure literally hours to days after we've had a commission meeting. As a result, we have to go through the emergency amendment process to try to close the season as quickly as we can, and that's why we're here today. This is the announcement in the back of your evaluation. We mistakenly put the Spanish mackerel closure in there, so that's why we handed out the cobia closure, and you have that at this time. On August 28th, NOAA Fisheries announced that they would be closing on September 24th. It would be for the commercial fleet in federal waters only, and this is for the migratory group of cobia, which is Georgia through New York. NIMS projects that the commercial landings of cobia will be exceeding the commercial allowable catch limit of 50,000 pounds. The justification is based on landings reported to the federal dealers already in the NOAA system, plus what they're projecting the states will have that are not in the NOAA database at this time. Closing Virginia state waters may help with these overages and keep those at or slightly above or just at the 50,000 pounds. Virginia, to date, this is a little bit, is an amendment from what's in your evaluation because I updated these numbers yesterday. It's 17,139 pounds. This isn't complete yet. We don't have all of our reports in for August, so this will go up slightly. North Carolina numbers are not known at this time, but they average about 37,000 pounds for the past 5 years. So you take their average plus what we're seeing, we're over that. We're already over that quota. And Virginia and North Carolina typically comprise about 92% of the commercial harvest over the past 5 years. Staff is proposing that September 30th will be the last day for the commercial fishery because that's what we've done the last 3 years. Coincides with the recreational sector when that sector will close. And it will have negligible impact on the commercial sector. The October to December harvest is usually less than 1% of the annual statewide harvest. And you can see in this graph, you can see the last couple of years in October through December, it's been usually less than a percentage, 1%, with just a couple of trips. So it's the harvest after September is pretty negligible. The regulation changes we have, when we started going through this, staff noticed that we have an administrative change, revision. We found out that in April of last year, we removed the prohibition of gaffing, which was section 20, subsection C. We removed that section, but we didn't remove it in the title. So that first section is removing that from the title of Chapter 4 VAC 20-51020, and it will read as such: recreational fishery possession limits, season closure, and vessel allowances. So it's just a housekeeping type of thing. And the seasonal closure we talked about, which is Chapter 4 VAC 20-510, Section 25, which is the commercial fishery possession limits and season. We're just changing one word in there in subsection B. It's changing from 18 to 19, and it reads 2019, it shall be unlawful for any person fishing commercially to harvest or possess any cobia after September 30th. And staff recommends adopting the emergency amendment to Chapter 4 VAC 20-510-10 pertaining to amberjack and cobia to establish an October 1 closure date for the commercial cobia fishery, and recommend advertising for an October public hearing to adopt this amendment as a permanent regulation.
Questions of Mr. Gear by members of the commission? Keep in mind, this is pursuant to Section 28.2-210, an emergency regulation. No public hearing is required. Does anyone in the audience wish to be heard on this matter? Just to give the benefit, I see none. The matter is before the commission for discussion and action. Mr. Minor.
Approve staff recommendation.
Motion made to approve staff recommendations. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Neal. Further discussion? Realizing that this is necessary, I think we have a whole lot of option. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Gear, next item is the public hearing pertaining to summer flounder. Is that going to is that setting the commercial offshore? Can we?
That should just take a couple minutes.
Item number 12, proposal to amend Chapter 4 VAC 26-2010 pertaining to summer flounder to establish fall 2019 commercial offshore summer flounder fishery management measures.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. No, ma'am, not yet. Good morning, Ms. Ramsey.
Good morning.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry.
Yeah. Proceed, please.
Okay, this is a public hearing today. Proposal to amend Chapter 4 VAC 20-620 pertaining to summer flounder to establish the fall 2019 commercial offshore summer flounder management measures. On May 17, 2019, National Marine Fisheries Service published the revised 2019 summer flounder fishery specifications. In December of 2018, the 2019 specifications were published. Then in May, they were revised using the most updated information from the 2018 benchmark stock assessment. Virginia receives 21.3% of the coastwide commercial quota. Virginia's revised quota for 2019 is 2.3 million pounds. This is an increase of 71% from our 2018 quota of 1.3 million pounds. Our goal for this offshore fishery is to land 60% of our allowable landings in the first period or during the springtime, and 40% during the second period or the fall. Because of this mid-year quota increase, only 46% of our allowable landings were achieved in the spring. This has left Virginia with more quota and the ability for longer open landing periods and an increased landing limit for the fall season. We have been working with our stakeholders and industry to establish these proposed open periods and landing limits. So what we would like is October 1 through November 15 with a 10,000 pound landing limit. And then again, November 16 through December 31st with another 10,000 pound landing limit. The second landing period will be closely monitored on a day-to-day basis by staff and closed when the quota is projected to be met. This graph is just an illustration of the last few years of Virginia's quota and landings. Our goal is always to achieve 100% of our quota. 2015 was the last comparable year that our quota was at about 2.3 million pounds, and we did allow vessels to have 2 landing periods in the fall. This is an illustration of the regulation change. So section 40D, we're changing the dates and then changing the possession limit, the total possession limit from 7,000 to 10,000. And then we're adding a whole new subsection E, which is reflecting the same as D, but with the different dates. Staff recommends that the Commission approve the amendments to Chapter 4 VAC 20-620 pertaining to summer flounder to establish the fall 2019 commercial offshore summer flounder management measures.
Thank you, Jill. Any questions of Ms. Ramsey by members of the commission? Thank you, ma'am. This is a public hearing. Does anyone in the public wish to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, the matter is before the commission.
Move that we approve staff recommendations.
Motion made by Mr. Minor to approve staff recommendations. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Second by Mr. Ballard. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank
Jill? Next item, request for public hearing 15 pertaining to sharks.
Thanks. I know I'm up here somewhere.
Mr. Gillingham, good day, sir.
Good day, Commissioner and associates. Why am I not finding this? I saw it earlier. I know it was there. Pardon? I looked at it once I sent it here. Tidewater tank. Is this even the right section?
Is it in your folder?
It's in the presentation folder, I think. So it should be here.
Do you need to find it somewhere else, Lou?
Well, I found it when I sent it here.
Okay.
Maybe you can,
Well, let's-
maybe I sent it to the wrong location, but I can.
There it is.
There you go.
I knew I saw it. Okay. Let me go here. Why'd you disappear on me? Full screen? Slideshow. There it is, full screen.
Go ahead, it's right there.
It keeps.
I know, just be patient. There's got to be another way in here. Sneak up behind it.
We've got an IT man back here I'm paying good money to. Dave Lego, can you come up here and take a shot at this? You got it?
Oh, yeah.
See, Dave, all I had to do is call you. There you go. Pretty good.
This will
There we
take
go.
less time. Okay, this is a request for a public hearing. It's a proposal to amend Chapter 4, VAC 20, 490 pertaining to sharks to revise the minimum
recreational size limit for Atlantic shortfin makos. The purpose of this request is to comply with the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission's Coastal Shark Management Plan. The issue is conservation of the shortfin mako shark resource through uniform enforcement measures in both federal and state waters. Staff recommends the commission advertise for an October public hearing to amend pertaining to sharks 490 to modify the minimum size limit for short-fin mako sharks for recreational fishermen. Specifically, the staff requests advertising a 71-inch straight line fork length minimum size for male short-fin mako sharks and an 83-inch straight line length minimum size for female short-fin sharks.
Okay, boy, that was.
Any questions?
Just one, I should have read up a little bit more. I presume that the Mako is in good shape and everything is.
No, it's not.
That's what I thought.
And that's what
Then-
ICAT determined in 2017.
Yeah,
It's
okay, well,
and it's
that's
a global organization, it's not coastwide, and we're now.
loaded question. What, I mean, I understand the necessity for uniformity and enforcement. I'd rather anyway, we can advertise for public hearing, I can talk then, so anyway, any questions?
I have one question. I just have.
Go ahead, Mr. Tankard.
So you get hold of one of these sharks, how are you going to determine the male, female?
I had no idea you'd ask that. Here's a generalized figure of a
Oh, it'd have to be you, Ed.
This is a pelvic fin, and this in the side view is what's called the male clasper. Sharks are one of the few groups of fishes that do have internal fertilization. This is a female underside. This is the vent area. There's the anal fin. And this is a male. At 71 inches, a male shark is mature, and this is pretty obvious. I would offer that a person is more likely to misidentify the species of the shark than say this 81-inch fish is actually, this 75-inch fish is a female.
I think you ought to just cut the leader, but anyway.
Yeah, or just when in doubt, throw it out.
Okay.
All right, thank you. You sound like you were prepared for that, seemed like you were prepared for that question.
I've got more.
Oh, no, that's okay. Yeah. That's okay. Any questions? Mr. Ballard?
And maybe it's for public hearing next month, but just anecdotally, I hear talk of makos all over the place. Tuna fishermen getting heads bit off, not able to bring tuna into the boat. Is that the same species, or is this?
Probably not. It sounds like it's primarily hammerheads and maybe duskies, but I wouldn't put it past a mako shark. I mean, they're probably the fastest of the sharks, and tuna is on their major item on their diet, but their numbers are staggeringly lower. I mean, 75 to almost 80% is what the projected reduction is needed to start rebuilding. And even though these are recreational measures, the whole commercial fishery operates in federal waters, and that's the crux of the case. Fish really aren't in state waters except when they're landed. And they've curtailed the pelagic longline fishery too. It's closely monitored with an observer, and only if the fish is dead when it's brought on board are they allowed to keep it, to try to cut down dead discard. So I mean, both, they're looking at it on a global nature.
Okay. I can say it's not going to be a very, anyway. Any questions?
Yes, sir.
What's the pleasure of the commission?
Move to approve the advertisement for public hearing in October.
Motion made by Mr. Tankard to approve staff's request for public hearing pertaining to sharks. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Dr. Neal. Further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Lewis, thank you, sir. The next item is request for public hearing pertaining to Tautog to establish a commercial Tautog license and ASMFC mandated tagging system. Oh, well. by the way, for anyone that's here, we will be breaking for lunch. What's the last, other than those two, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. We'll be breaking for lunch after this, and we will return to hear items 10 and 13.
Item 9 also.
9, is that?
Public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. We'll do that before we break for lunch. Go ahead.
Great. Good morning, Commissioner, members of the Commission. This is a request for public hearing on proposed amendments to Chapter 4 VAC 2960 pertaining to tautog to establish a commercial tautog permit and Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission mandated tagging system. There's been an issue, growing law enforcement issues in some of the mid-Atlantic and northern states with illegal and undersized tautog. Part of the reason is that the growing live market values smaller fish, so a lot of fish under the minimum size has been found. Also, recreational fishermen are bringing live fish home and selling them as well. The ASMFC recommended a tagging program and approved Amendment 1, which required all commercial tautog be tagged by January 1st, 2019. This was later pushed back to January 1, 2020 to allow for some gear revisions. So in item 1, we have the current applicator and tags which will be used. The need for this tag, it had to identify state tag year. It had to be easy to use on a vessel. It had to be difficult to reuse or counterfeit. It had to not impact the appearance of the fish or the fillets, whether it was live or dead market, and to allow the fish to survive because they are kept sometimes for months in live tanks. Image 2 is actually the old applicator. This was during an initial test of the tags. Like I said, it has been revised to what you see in image 1. 3, the tag is being applied to the operculum of the tautog, and 4 is a tagged fish. Staff recommends creating a commercial tautog permit. Any commercial harvester can get a permit and tags. There will be we're recommending a $25 fee to offset program costs. VMRC will distribute tags based on a permittee's historical harvest or some minimum amount if there is no historical harvest. And permittees may request more tags when running low at any point during the year. So staff recommends advertising an October public hearing to amend Chapter 4 VAC 2960 pertaining to tautog to establish a commercial tautog permit and ASMFC mandated tagging system. And I can take any questions.
Any questions or Alexa by members of the commission? Thank you, ma'am. Seeing none, the matter is before the commission. Dr. Neal?
Move to approve request for public hearing.
Motion made by Dr. Neal. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. France? Further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Let's do this before we break. Is anyone here for public comments that wishes to comment on anything that's not on the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, it's 5 minutes to 12. What do y'all think? How much time do you want? 30 minutes? 45 minutes? Call it. Mr. Minor's also got a conflict he needs to get to as well, so I'd like to, we'll do there about 30, which will mean we'll reconvene. Let's say we'll reconvene at 12:30, 35 minutes.